flip through, which I've already apologized for a couple of times, is not the best PowerPoint, but yeah, and you're getting the book for free. I put a little into getting us the rights, and so, oh man, yeah, I hate when they got timing things, so I'm part of that. Okay, so we're in the analysis phase, but it really is about determining what the requirements are, elicitation. That's pulling them from the customers, right, who we're doing things for. And the premise is, and you can question whether it really is a valid one, but the users know what they want, and our job is to pull that from them. Steve Jobs said famously, customers don't know what they want till you show it to them. Now, for me, the truth is somewhere in between there. If we're trying to sell a system we've done to make money, or a hardware, which is more what Apple does, then there's maybe that invent something new and do it. But it's kind of, we are solving the user's problems, but many times the users don't know what the menu is, what's possible, and those kinds of things. So it really is kind of bouncing between, almost prototyping, saying here's what you could get, and then saying, trying to get what you actually need. And it is an art, and we're just reading the first aspect of it. Okay, analysis, and that's really what the word means. And the idea is, and it's a very Western philosophy, like kind of Europe and the U.S., the Western world, but the way to understanding something is breaking it into its pieces and seeing how they integrate, then we understand the whole. Sometimes you just kind of got to get the whole thing, maybe a softer, more Eastern philosophy. But here we are, we're just breaking the thing down into its functions, and so whatever we got from the planning phase is what comes in here. So, yep, you read it in the book and you read it on the screen, okay? But we are, this really, system analysis is what's gone on, and new requirements are what does it need to be moving forward. Okay. So final is proposal and presentation, and so that's here's what we're going to do, and then this walkthrough is just a kind of where we present it all to the customer. Okay. You can read as fast as I can, right? And maybe not, but you can take time to them. That's really just not much there. Requirement is what the system needs to do. There it is. Okay. So here, and this is probably, other than the general idea and how the phases fit together, is the first important takeaway. Okay, and it echoes what we looked at in the NSF. Right? So the requirement is a statement of what the system does, but here they, what the user needs, and these are parallel to what the NSF had, a little bit different, but realize that you have different facets of requirements. Okay, now sometimes business requirements in this kind of sense it needs to be profitable, or it's budget kinds of things. We can't spend more than $10,000. Okay. Whereas the functional requirements get down to the more what the system ought to do. And so similar to what MSF does, not identical. And sometimes, depending on the situation, you might need to ask once or twice, okay, is business, are you really talking functional? It's not a hair-splitting thing where you argue with them, but realize sometimes they're doing things, kinds of requirements, sometimes they're situational, more non-functional. Right? So, and if you need example, the book is full of it. Okay, so I could have taken time to write mine up, but just think of the system must. Okay, and the system should kinds of statements, and then you're on the track of a requirement. Right? And so those are just excellent examples, and we'll get some practice writing some, but musts and shoulds, sometimes they're making the distinction between process-oriented and the information they get, and that's just the way to think of it. there's really the process, the information, and the management or control are kind of the three. Right? So, some examples of non-functional, and I've broken them into different categories. So, like I said, like handheld devices. It's not about what it does, it's going to be a little bit about how it does it. But the system is able to. All right? How quickly must it go? Performance kinds of things. So what your book provides is a great checklist of where you go. Oh, when you're interviewing somebody, you're doing an interview, you might say, oh, are there any cultural things, or am I getting a vibe? Does it need to be multi-language? I don't need to read, but those are examples of the kinds of what a requirement is, and a great template if you have to write some. And just always say, oh, the system must, the system should, could be able to, those kinds of things. Right? Yeah, determining requirements. We need all roles involved. The business needs to get involved. IT needs to get involved. Both the product and program manager need to be involved. And yeah, getting everybody to work together. Easy to say. It's on the slide. Answer a multi-choice question on it. This is important. It continues, and sometimes the requirements get refined. We start working on it, and it helps us to better understand what we're doing. So it isn't always just just a point in time. And it's gathered to a formal statement, okay? And there's just a good example of the kind of document that ends up going. Sometimes it might be expanded with a little bit of discussion or paragraph on what that is, maybe even things like data flow diagrams or use cases or ERDs, some things we're going to get to, but documentation that goes in. It's will enable to create a customer offer. Okay, well, what's a customer offer really? Is it in our context? But that's what requirements definition looks like. The hard part is, have I got them all? Have I got the good ones? Have I got the right ones? No. Nothing but practice and trying, but in terms of just what the vocabulary is, there it goes. Elicitation is how do we get people to cough them up, right? That is hard work. And if you do it well, you're almost, people kind of hate you for keep asking the same questions in different ways. It's like you don't get it, and you're always kind of pressing. Give me an example. What's the thing? It's work, but yes, you can answer a question. They should carefully determine who's included. Absolutely. Everybody and anybody, but discerning who has the real say-so is the important thing. All right. So actually, I had somebody come by doing a marketing internship, and I gave her this chapter. She was delighted because she's going to have to go elicit some requirements about how to do HR processes down the hill at the main GRU. And so I said, oh, there's good. And what the book has about interviewing ideas and I have you do an exercise for it does make sense. If you have taken somebody's time for an interview, I was preparing for the interview, I'm trying to get my little magic marker here for a laser pointer. And here's some questions I'm going to do, some maybe open-ended questions to go with, and always thank them for the time and like pass back. Here's a summary of I think what you said, or maybe it's on a phone call, but just try to say it back to them so they know that you care. If you ask for information, always spin it back so they know what you got, and then show them how you're using it. Okay, and then the book has some detail about how to do all that. All right. Nothing rocket science here. Right? You find out when you can get to them, and let them know ahead, and maybe sometimes send them a list of questions. Okay, that's a great way for them to prepare and think about it. This is not the kind of thing where we're going to do what's it called, ambush journalism, and what's the strategic vision for accounting? And you're the CEO or CFO or CAO, accounting officer. You don't even know. If you ask them ahead of time, you can let them prepare and then use the time together to follow up and get the detail. But if it didn't occur to you being a junior in the university, that you'd have to plan interviews or set up a schedule, I don't know. So I'm not saying there's no value added. It's good to remember, and that's where a book like this kind of helps you to prepare, right? So nice way to break the ice is close-ended questions, right? Something they can answer real specifically, and a little bit more, just okay. Can you talk some? Because that's how they'll get communicate what it is they might just get to some new discovery. Lawyers call it, okay? And some of the probing kinds of things, okay? And boy, your personal, emotional intelligence comes into play. Sometimes I don't have the most of it, but people get tired. Maybe getting into a touchy area for some reason, and so sometimes you just have to back off and come back. Again, the hardest thing is what to do with it, information, what you get, how you combine it and do something with it. And we've got to learn to do it a little bit before we can practice with that. All right. Yep. And sometimes we know exactly what we're after and we just really need a lot of detail. Sometimes it's, like I say, discovery of kind of where they are and on there. All right. Don't have a general rule, but sometimes you start out very specific and then you go to the general, and then you kind of top down. This is probably where you start with the bookkeepers, say in an accounting system. This is where you start with the chief accounting officer or something like that. Okay. And not much to add there. Great. And that's really, these two are critical, okay, for an interview. And you can't do enough of just letting them know and taking the steps in there. Important things first. Know what you're going to do. Know what the signals are. Gee, I'm done. I got what I needed. We're done here. And I'm like that. So, all right. It doesn't say be professional and unbiased. Just appear that way. So, be professional and be unbiased. That's easy to say. It's hard. I know you can always get maybe a tape recording if they're willing, or even these days it's not hard to videotape it. But sometimes that can be a little intrusive. Doing a lot of writing is. What's really good if you can swing it is get somebody to take notes. You do the interview and somebody sort of being like quote the secretary at a meeting, because it is hard to be on top of the interview plan and recording it at the same time. So I don't think the book has that, but that's excellent. Then it's 2 against 1 in case it gets out of hand. Kind of joking there, but that would be a suggestion I'd make if you can, or have 2 of you there, and good cop, bad cop them. And not that we're trying to get a confession, but sometimes it helps to have a rest, okay? And sometimes if you get 2 or 3 interviewees if they're together on it, but sometimes the 2 interviewers and 1 interviewee, and even then go to this bookkeeper, then the second bookkeeper, and the third will be a much better way to go. And so some post-interview stuff already highlighted by myself is let them know. And there's a report and some notes, and did I miss some clarification and updates? So before you take it on. And Jad, you read about it a couple of weeks ago, and it's really getting all levels of the organization or the team together and help with the requirements, because sometimes you talk to somebody and boy, everybody has something different. By bringing people together, and that idea is joint application development is the name, and you get a facilitator, and that can cost a lot of money, and sometimes it does help. Okay. And so it's more of a focus group approach. Okay. And okay, the book's right, they can help. It takes a lot of adeptness, and at the end you have to Steve Jobs it. That here's what we can give you, and here's why this is going to be good for you, and here's why you want to get excited about it to deliver that system. It's great. So you select participants the same way. Facilitator is a tough thing. There's a lot of people who say they can do it and get money. It ought to be external, right? So it's not somebody, you don't want the manager of operations to be this. You want somebody fresh and strange from the outside. Strange, not in odd, but somebody they're not familiar with, just to provide that independence. And like I said, there's a lot of people who maybe will take your money for doing this. Some are better than others. Okay. Right. Oh yeah. Sometimes they have retreats and they last a long time. Some of these bullet points are. It depends on the careful plan. What doesn't? Right. We understand that this JAD is a facilitator in groups. Then you pretty much got the sense of it. Now you have a checklist in the book to go back and look for on it. Right. I guess one thing I'd add here, I mean, you read the book, you could read the slides as well as I can. It's a hard thing to not impute your own knowledge or your own kind of conclusions of what you're thinking on something in a session. It's hard just to be neutral or not say, well, here's what I think you're saying. Maybe write it down literally and let them comment. No, that's not what I meant. Yeah, filling in, on the jargon. It's pretty much what we're doing with this chapter in this book so far, is letting you understand the jargon of analysis and design. So if we go to a little project or some exercises, we're ready. Okay, so, and some stuff about questionnaires. Right. And written, and you can do them through the web. You can attach them to emails. It's another thing. You can spend a career doing good questionnaires. Principles are the same. It's just that the conclusions are different. Sometimes designing the questionnaire, it's kind of like an exam. It's easiest if it's multi-choice, but those don't get to the deep things. Too open-ended, right, on essays, it's hard to, take 50 different answers that are written out. What's wrong with the way we're doing things now? And you got 50 of those to look at. It's going to be hard to pull common things out. Completions, maybe matching kinds of things, help just provide a little structure. But you could write a whole book in psychology questionnaires, probably. That. Don't overdo them. Here's some good checklists. In my opinion, GRU. We don't go a week before there's another survey and questionnaire and things like that. Keep it short. Golly, 10 questions. If you can, a big crowded page. There's times that I just, it's easy to tune out. So make sure you get the stuff that you need in, and ask yourself at the end of the day, is the information you're going to get going to be actionable, right? If it's not going to make the difference between a decision, then don't ask it. And so documented analysis is if they do keep a documentation about process and org charts, and you basically look through them to get the information. And if they have the procedure, here's how we do purchase orders, then you're in good shape, right? You read that, and that is a good start. And then you can, and I have done a lot of this on my audits. Did controls reviews back in an earlier career, 2 or 3 careers back, and you really just kind of observe. And supposedly they have a procedure, and do they comply with the procedure? Sometimes they can be extremely careful. I've been amazed that even when they know an auditor's looking, they don't quote behave, and I've had to, kind of quote write them up, just because they're not. They weren't following the controls procedure, and so it worked out. And there's book's got a thing on just elicitation and a checklist of what you might really kind of need. So if you need broad, then questionnaires might be a good way to elicit that. And if it's integrative, then integrative, we want everybody together. So this is probably the 3rd or 4th good thing from the book, in their humble opinion of the authors, in roughly speaking. what kind of thing do you need, right? You need some details, you're going to have to jump in and do this. It's hard to get details from questionnaires and get answers to questions from documents that are already out there because they might not come up. So that's a keeper, at least in principle. Right. And, right. So this is now getting what are the issues, and it's brainstorming. You know, the problem is it's going to be small things that they're talking about, but as they go. Oh, this is a variation of maybe ask why 5 times. It's a principle. You know, like those burnout frequency. Why? Well, it's premature, or it's the end of the rated life. Okay, well, it's trying to find out, well, why do they go out, prematurely, and so kind of dive down 3 or 4 levels. The accounting system, purchase order system's broken. Well, what's wrong with it? Well, it takes too long to get paid. Okay, what do you mean? Example, and things like that. So root cause. Here's another term. So like I said, this is basically think of it as almost like a glossary, this chapter. Okay? And how long? Clock sorts of things, or days maybe in terms of processing. And so that's a different kind of analysis. Change the process, do more things at one time. How do you make something shorter? And just realize that that's an approach. The way ABC is kind of, it used to be the biggest thing, and now it's less. It's trying to go, how much does it cost to teach a class, right? We pay Schultz, we pay some lights, we got some D2L stuff to go with, we got the room rent and like that. So what does it cost us to deliver a class? And so you can try to come around to some of those kinds of things. A lot of times for an information system, this is not any help, really. You might find the costly steps in improving its operations, good operations. It's not so important, really, coming up in information systems. Okay. A benchmark is a comparison. How do we do against some norms? We turn around POs in 2 days, but the industry does it in a day and a half. What's wrong with us? So finding those benchmarks and measuring it in place, but it's a term, benchmarking. And so take away that you know what benchmarking is, and the outcome analysis is what are we doing now with the customer? Okay, and this is where the Steve Jobs. What could we be doing to delight and please the customer? Okay. And, right. Well, this is important and interesting technologies. They all are, right? But here's where you try to get them. The users you're interviewing might not know what's available. This is where you kind of get them a sense of the menu. Okay, well, it could do this, could do that. Here's how it looks. Here's maybe how a Surface or a touchpad might help you with your thing. Do you see that kind of working, and maybe gets the wheels going about adopting new technology. There's the sense or term. It's called paving the cow path, right? So the cows follow the meandering path, from the barn to the field and back, and it comes in the road. Well, gosh, this is the way that everybody goes, so we pave the cow path rather than thinking what's the most efficient way to go. And this is easy to say, quit doing low-value things. It takes a good bit of work to get there, but realize just nomenclature, activity elimination is that aspect of doing the analysis. Doesn't mean you know how to do it yet, but you know what it is. None of this is going to be the perfect. That's why there's so many. It borrows from every bit of the psychological part of management that you can get. It depends on the project. It depends on the maturity of the organization. It depends on your skill set. So it doesn't mean that everything we've said in it so far is kind of worthless. What you need is just this bag or set of concepts, and then hone your skills over time in using them, or at least just be aware of what they are. And there we go. So good stuff. knowing the checklists, being able to differentiate among the kinds of requirements, being able to state a requirement articulately and succinctly. If you feel like you can do that, then yeah, we're good to go. All right.